Hello, and thank you for joining us for this presentation regarding predatory offender registration here within the City of St. Cloud. My name is Tad Hessian. I'm a sergeant with the Community Engagement Division of the St. Cloud Police Department. And what I'm here to do today is to really introduce and outline what we do within the City of St. Cloud. The Department of Corrections is also going to give you a lengthy presentation regarding this particular registrant that we're here to talk about today, as well as some other information regarding the Department of Corrections and the Intensive Supervision Relief or Response Program as well. Also, we'll have a presentation from the Jacob Wedling Resource Center to help give you a little more information regarding safety of your families and of your children. The St. Cloud Police Department does really take your safety of you, the citizens, as well as visitors of the City of St. Cloud and our surrounding area extraordinarily seriously. And one of those things that we get a lot of feedback on is regarding predatory offender registrants who are within the City of St. Cloud. And the Department of Corrections will detail exactly how many we have, and sometimes there's some misnomers and there's some rumors about the people that are, in fact, have to register by law, why they're here within the City of St. Cloud, and why they live where they live. And the Department of Corrections will address some of those things as well, so to help give you as much comfort as possible. Our job at the St. Cloud Police Department is truly to be transparent and give you as much information as you can to help make you aware of what is within the City of St. Cloud, and also give you education to know that there are different things to think about when it comes to predatory offender registration. In particular, the St. Cloud Police Department has the Community Crime Impact Team, and a couple functions of that team, which I get a chance to supervise, is one, all registrants within the City of St. Cloud go through the Community Crime Impact Team to make sure that we're getting regular checks on them by statute. And the City of St. Cloud, as the Department of Corrections will tell you, actually does far more checks than is required by law or by registration, because we want to make sure that we know where people are and that we're holding them accountable. What we do is we make sure that every month that set people who are up for registration per our policy and procedure are checked on by officers within the St. Cloud Police Department to make sure that the registration that they have within the BCA and the Department of Corrections is up to date, that their photographs are up to date, and that we have all as much information as we can. Additionally, the Community Crime Impact Team has officers that check on those that are listed as most likely to reoffend, which are the ones that are deemed as level 3 predatory offenders. What the Department of Corrections will talk a lot about today is what that means and why we have that designation. In general, the reason that you're seeing this video right now is because the person who is moving to the City of St. Cloud has been deemed a level 3 predatory offender registrant. And because of that, we're doing mass notification, not only from this video, which will be posted on the City of St. Cloud website and also will be viewed on the St. Cloud Public Access channel, but we also sent out mailers to about a 1-mile radius from where this resident is going to be living once he does get released from prison. What we want to make sure that you know is that the St. Cloud Police Department does have your back. We want to make sure that you know that we are checking on people. You want to make sure that you know that we are communicating with people, not just the registrants, but also the Bureau of Criminal Apprehension. And there are 2 agents who specialize in predatory offender crimes within the City of St. Cloud or the St. Cloud metropolitan area, and we communicate with them on a regular basis. Also, we also communicate with the Department of Corrections and the ISR folks to make sure that we are ongoing, making sure that all the information that we have is communicated to you with what we can, and that you are up to date with as much information as humanly possible. We also here within the City of St. Cloud have many resources for folks that have more interest or want to learn more about what is happening within their community and how to keep their community safe. The Jacob Wedling Resource Center video, which will be attached to this presentation, will give you ample amount of information, also some additional resources. We'll also talk about other resources such as the Central Minnesota Sexual Assault Center, which we have as an amazing resource within the confines of the City of St. Cloud, which work with people in the entire metropolitan area. At the end of this presentation, I'll also provide my direct contact information, so if anyone has any specific questions or concerns, you can feel free to call me directly or email me with anything that you have. Again, thank you so much for tuning into this, and we hope that you are as informed as humanly possible. And with that, I'll hand it over to the Department of Corrections.
Thank you, Tad, and thank you for taking the time out of your busy schedule to receive this information about not only the individual you're here to learn about today, but the entirety of the process. of notification on those designated to be subject to broad public notification. And my name is Brad Vandervet, as Sergeant Hession had mentioned, and I am with the Minnesota Department of Corrections. And so I'm going to kind of take you through a PowerPoint today that's going to come at you in three kind of distinct parts. The first section, I really want to establish and start the conversation with background and some of the foundational components to the overall Minnesota risk management system that we utilize in dealing with this population of individuals. And then I'm going to use that information as kind of an overlay as we get into the specifics about the individual you're here to learn about today. And then on into some resources and information, and hopefully throughout the presentation, given the nuance of doing it on video, I'll try to really touch on some of those frequently asked questions that do often come up at meetings like this. So I find the best place to really begin and start off with is what we know as a community, as society. And what we know is that those individuals who engage in this kind of harm, sexual harm against people in the community, they exist. They are not new, they're not unique. What is new, or what is newer, is the way that the system is responding to what we know about this. And we have learned a lot through some very rigorous, lengthy studies that I'll reference here throughout the presentation, and how that informs our tools and procedures and practices. So just keep in mind, I think the best way to really put it is think of it as a bit of a funneling effect. And so with what we know in society is that of those who are harmed, sexually harmed, or experience sexual violence, only a portion of those people will go on to report to law enforcement or to trusted adults the actions or whatever had happened to them. So only a portion go on to tell what had happened. Of those that report their assaults to law enforcement, only a portion of them will go on to receive or to have their report charged out. And of those charged out, only a portion of those will go on to receive a conviction. And of those convicted, only a portion will cross the threshold of prison, have their sentence executed, and enter a state correctional facility. And so as you can see just from that, the narrowing funnel, and we need that awareness on these individuals who have crossed that threshold of prison, but we also need that same level of awareness more broad and on all individuals who have interactions and may come into contact with our community members and those we care most about. So one of those foundational components that really kind of set the stage for what the state does now with risk management is the registry. It was known as the Sex Offender Registry when it came online in 1991. And it really was founded by the hard work and advocacy of the Jacob Wetterling Resource Center and then on to other advocacy groups throughout the nation. And it was a way where they had reached out to local law enforcement and had asked, what more can we do? Following the abduction of Jacob Wetterling, how can we provide you with greater tools and resources and assets to help you in policing and doing the important work you do day in and day out? And resoundingly, law enforcement said, we need a system that connects our data, that allows us to be preemptive and proactive as opposed to reactive. Prior to the registry, data was housed in the departments or agencies where it existed and was shared with other agencies once someone became known to them. This was able to make things more proactive, so the agencies could quickly, accurately access this information and utilize it in proactive policing efforts. So the registry is for law enforcement purposes only because the data and information it collects is private information. It collects and maintains address information of those registrants. That includes their primary address and secondary addresses, places that they may frequent. Think family members' houses, vacation properties, or things of that nature. It also requires them to register their employment. That's all employment, where they work. Also, school, where they attend school or vocational school, and in addition, the vehicles they use, own, or operate. And that would include employers' vehicles as well. A registered individual must make known to law enforcement all vehicles they operate. Should they be found operating a motor vehicle not registered to them, they may find themselves charged and potentially convicted of a new felony failure to register. Also, they must register things that they rent, such as storage units and things of that nature. So it's a very robust system with the intention of really keeping a very close eye on where these individuals are, where they frequent, and what they're doing. So who is required to register is really the next big question when it comes to the registry. And that list has actually grown in Minnesota. Like I had mentioned just a moment ago, it had initially been focused on sex offenders. And Minnesota saw the value and benefit of this registry and extended it even beyond that, to the point now where we have those individuals who are charged with or convicted of offenses such as kidnapping or false imprisonment also on the registry. So this created a need for a name change. It was no longer just the sex offender registry, and this is why we now call it the predatory offender registry. And so an easy way to kind of keep it straight in your mind as you're looking at this is that not all predatory offenders on the registry are sex offenders, but all sex offenders are predatory offenders, as you're kind of looking at the way we use the names and how they've changed over the years.
So for conversations like the one we're having today, I'm able to take kind of a 30,000 foot flyover view of our state's registry to really help you to see the direct impact of the information we're sharing. And so to really kind of take this in, I want you to have in your mind the analogy of a funnel. And at its largest end, from what we know of those offenses that occur, we know that a vast majority of them never get reported to law enforcement. Of those that do get reported, we know that even a smaller portion of that group go on to receive formal charges. And of those charged, we know that only a percentage of that group will go on to receive convictions. And of those convicted, we know here in the state of Minnesota, only a portion of that group may go on to cross the threshold of a state prison. And that is what would trigger a risk level assessment and assignment. And so as you can see here from the first of the year, at about that 2/3 point down that funnel, we had 18,727 registered individuals throughout our state. That's all registered individuals, from those with no risk level assigned because they haven't entered prison, to those with levels of 1, 2, or 3. And you can see as of May 19th, when I last ran these numbers, and a couple things to keep in mind with these numbers is that they are dynamic and they do fluctuate. But as of the 19th of May, you can see in Stearns County, there were 434 registered individuals. Again, that's all levels and those without a level that resided within Stearns County. 7 of whom, that smaller number to the right, are those subject to broad notification because of that risk level assignment of 3 or because of a civil commitment. You can see zeroing in on the St. Cloud area or region, there are 354 of those 434 that reside within St. Cloud's boundaries. Again, those 7 residing within St. Cloud, as this is a regional hub. You can see other neighboring communities as well. Again, the larger number to the left are all registered individuals within that county. The smaller number to the right, those subject to broad public notification. So you can see the necessity for that broad awareness. If we only were to just focus on those that receive that broad notification, we may be missing interactions from that larger group. And with numbers like this, it's also very clear to see that there are registered individuals living within all communities in Minnesota. And if not living directly within, certainly passing through for all manner of purposes and reasons. Another snapshot, looking at the data available as of May 19th of 2021, we can see that at that moment in the state, there were a total of 475 registered individuals subject to that broad public notification residing within communities throughout the state, 12 of whom are out of compliance with their registry and the requirements of it and need to be returned to compliance and brought back before law enforcement to get them back into compliance. So you can see again that that's that narrowest amount of folks we get to talk about, that 15%.
This is Nathan Braun. First, I'll speak to photographs. On average, photographs are updated annually, or if the subject were to significantly modify or change their appearance. So you will always have an up-to-date photo representation of this person for as long as he remains subject to the registry. If you were to see him in the community and note that he no longer looks like these photos, certainly let law enforcement or corrections or both know. And they will obtain updated photos where I will then place them onto the public registrant search site so that you always have that accurate photo. Next, I want to talk about vitals. Mr. Braun is currently 32 years of age, and upon his release, he will be residing at the 100 block of 12th Avenue North here in St. Cloud. Now, I want to speak briefly here about proximal addresses and why we utilize them. Oftentimes in meetings, questions will come up as to, can we know exactly where this person resides? And what we really know and understand from the way that the law is structured is that we cannot provide that specific type of information, although law enforcement corrections absolutely does know where he physically resides, where he works, what he drives, etc. With the proximal address, we still accomplish a great deal. No doubt those in this area are very aware of Mr. Braun as they see him come and go, and they will share that information amongst themselves, and that's just fine. But what we as agencies do not want is for someone from well outside of this community to come in and engage in any kind of vigilante or revenge type of conduct or behavior that does nothing to restore a victim and does nothing to deter future harm, and only really ends up working to disrupt the very thing that you've all worked so hard to create and maintain in your community. This is Mr. Braun's registrable offense history. This is not an exhaustive criminal history. If you are interested in his full criminal history, it is available to you publicly and can be found on the Bureau of Criminal Apprehension's website, or the BCA. You just literally type into your search bar MNBCA and it will pull up usually one of the first two hits you'll get, and you can just click on search criminal history, enter in his first name, last name, and date of birth, which you've just received on the previous slide, and it will give you his full criminal history. So do check that out if you're interested. But because notification focuses on the registry and registrable offenses, we're going to stay in that scope for this explanation. And this is also taken verbatim right off the fact sheets that you've been provided. So let's get right into the details of what happened. In 2017, Mr. Braun was convicted for criminal sexual conduct in the 3rd degree out of Benton County for conduct that he engaged in over the course of 2015 into 2016. This conduct was sexual in nature and was perpetrated against a 14-year-old female victim. At the time, Braun was 24 years of age. He'd initially purported to the victim that he was 17, and then later told her he was 19, and was found to be actually 24 during this time frame. He was known to her. It's unclear how he formulated his initial relationship, but it is known that he developed through the use of attention and affection and ease and comfort with her, so that he was able to attain and exploit unmonitored contact. Had you asked the victim at this time who this man was to her, she'd have reported that he was dating her as a boyfriend. So he used that manipulation to coerce and manipulate her behavior. For his crime, once it became known to law enforcement, He was committed to the Commissioner of Corrections for 91 months, and an additional 10 years of conditional release is applied to that as an enhancer. Now, a common question that will often come up when I talk about sentences is, why is it that those engaging in this type of harm that shocks the conscience, why is it that our systems allow opportunities for reentry into our communities? And the answer in part lies here with determinate sentencing. Some time back, Minnesota went away from a more familiar model of corrections known as parole. And we all know from TV and movies and so on that parole functions much like it does in those kind of popular entertainment shows, where an individual who goes to prison at a designated time becomes eligible to do the rest of their time in the community under parole. And they go before a board or a panel and effectively request the privilege of serving the remainder of their time out in the community. And what we found through all of our data and research that has informed our risk assessment tool and beyond is that this model, particularly for those who engage in person crimes, failed to really address their needs in a way that brought their reoffending down effectively. Because what was happening was these folks would end up staying for the duration of their time in their sentence, because no board was willing to allow someone out that may engage in future harm of this nature. And upon hearing that, usually we'll get a pretty big consensus in the room is that this is okay for us. We'd rather these folks serve every day they have coming to them. They've very much earned that time. But what we learned from all of that information was that this model failed to reduce those risk factors, because what was happening was they would languish in the institution for that huge period of time, and then they would be walked to the door and told, do not return. What we found to be far more effective was a transition. So by going to determinate sentencing, we eliminated any deciding entities or bodies on how or when an individual should be reentering the community, and is now mandated by law. So no judge, no law enforcement agency, no corrections agency gets to say when someone comes out of prison. The law stipulates it. So you will do, by determinate sentencing, 2/3 of your time in the institution if you go to prison, if the court executes that file, and 1/3 by law, again, must be served in the community under that supervised release period. And so 2/3 in for this individual, 1/3 out, plus an additional decade time to ensure, as an enhancer for this type of crime, that he is getting that continued robust support as he transitions back into the community. And we found this combination to be much more impactful on reducing incidences of reoffending conduct or behavior in a same or similar fashion. This is Mr. Braun's chronology as it breaks down around this particular conviction and sentence. In 2017, as we talked, he came into the institution. He crossed that threshold for that criminal sexual conduct 3rd degree out of Benton County. And in June of 2022, he was assessed by the End of Confinement Review Committee and assigned a risk level of 2. Now, as is the right of any registrant, they are able to have their risk level assignment reviewed by an administrative law judge. And that is exactly what happened here, as Mr. Braun requested that his risk level assignment of 2 be reviewed. And that's exactly what happened. The administrative law judge reviewed his risk level assignment and concluded in September of the same year, 2022, that his risk should be a 3. And so he was elevated by that judicial review process that he initiated. And so as a level 3, he's subject to that broad public notification. So in September of 2022, the 26th, as you see, he was released onto intensive supervised release, as is mandated for all risk level 3 designees. And while on that supervised release, he fell into violation for non-compliance with specific conditions of his supervised release, technical conditions, and also at the time a new alleged criminal
course of conduct or behavior that ultimately end up being charged and convicted as a new felony that was not a registrable offense. And so, again, if you want to know more about that, it is on his public criminal history, and you certainly can check that out. But because it was non-registration specific, it doesn't apply into this meeting. Do know, though, that any new criminal convictions, even if it's not a registry-involved type of conduct or behavior, does extend the time for a registrant, the duration that they have to report to law enforcement. So it does extend that. And anytime somebody comes back into the prison system, they are re-reviewed. And so you'll see here that no reassessment was necessary, as he's already been determined to be a level 3. Had he been released as a level 2, this might have likely increased him to a 3 at that point. And every time they come back, the committee will look at whether or not to forward a packet to the county attorney's office for consideration for civil commitment if they are engaging in conduct or behavior that leads them to determine his risk to be elevated. So there is an additional layer here beyond level 3. And as you can see here, in December of this year, the 26th, he will be released back into the community, again onto that intensive supervised release program with all of its rigor. So as it sits today for Mr. Braun, he is subject to oversight and correctional supervision until September of 2032. And at that point, he will expire so long as he does not have any new sentences coming down or being imposed upon him. As far as the registry goes, and I had mentioned here that that is a dynamic expiration date because it is dependent on him being law-abiding. But if he manages to maintain his law-abiding status going forward, he will expire from the registry on the 25th of December in 2030.
How we managed those high-risk folks in the community. And so the laws were set with ISR, or intensive supervised release, that caseloads could not exceed 15 individuals per agent. And to give you some comparison, some contrast as to what that means is a standard supervision agent managing adult sex offenders that have not had their sentences executed, those receiving probationary sentences. I would manage a caseload in the 50s on average. And that was a very manageable caseload for an agent in the community. So you can see just from that, the very intense level of attention given, one agent to every 15 individuals or 15 supervisees is really significant. And so the idea here is to really guide them as they implement those skills and tools into the community to ensure that they don't relapse or fall back into perhaps old problematic patterns of conduct or behavior. And what this does mean is that sometimes if they do encounter issues, perhaps not criminal in nature, say they are breaking curfew, or they're not communicating with their agent as they've been directed to, or things of that nature, they may find themselves going or being returned to custody for accountability time. And so just keep that in mind. If you see somebody return to custody and then come back out later on, it may very well have nothing to do with a new criminal act. It may very likely be what we call a technical violation. So the ISR initiative is really comprised of a significant effort to engage in effective release planning right early on when they come into the institution. For the agents, the caseworkers on the institution side, the treatment professionals that are dealing with and working with these men, to put together a good, solid release plan so that it is a very a warm handoff from the institutional side to the community side. They have a lot of supervision tools available to them, agents, in how they manage and monitor those on their caseload. And you see some lists up here, and they have daily contacts with these individuals. They are seeing them with a high level of frequency and checking in on them at all times. They operate very much like law enforcement in that 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, 365-day model. And so the idea is that with these rigorous structures, the step-down process or tiered process, the small caseload sizes, that all of this serves to very effectively mitigate risk. And that is exactly what we're here to do. And so just know that this supervision team is out there working day in and day out to just do that, to really manage that risk, to bring it down even further. This is the supervision team that's going to be responsible for this gentleman under the supervision of Paula Thielen. This is their contact number. If you have questions or concerns about this man that maybe don't rise to the level of imminent harm or public safety, but you're just curious, you saw him out on a walk or something like that, and you're wondering, did he have permission to do that? These would be the folks to really touch base with and check in on. And they value community input. It really does take all of us to remain effective in what we do. Always remember, too, that as a resource, you have local law enforcement. And folks, you saw the numbers I put up on that slide earlier. These men and women of your police department know who these people are. They're seeing them on a frequent basis. They know what's going on with them, and they've known about them. Law enforcement in general is known very specifically about these types of individuals since the 90s, and they are very effective at what they do. So really do reach out to them, because it's all those people we don't know about where your contact with law enforcement can be most critical. You may see something now as your awareness has been heightened that stands out to you in your community or neighborhood that seems off or odd or somehow raises the hairs on the back of your neck, but it may not be this man. I want you calling law enforcement, providing that information, because you know now that it may very well be someone else who maybe hasn't risen to that level of notification, but law enforcement would know who they are. So if you're able to provide a vehicle make, model, and license plate, or a description of the individual, they can run it against the database, and they can have a lot more knowledge than you or I could have just trying to figure it out from our front yard. So just keep that in mind. All right, other resources, as you're thinking about, okay, Brad, you just threw a bunch of information at me. How do I work this into what I can do in my family and in my community? I really want to point out the Jacob Wetterling Resource Center as one of many great resources available to you. And you're going to get to see their video here momentarily. I also want to steer you to, as Sergeant Hession pointed out earlier, the Sexual Assault Center here. There's a fantastic group of passionate people. Inevitably, conversations like this have a way of unfortunately triggering those that are watching, because statistics being what they are, the reality is somebody watching this has either directly experienced or knows or has supported somebody who has experienced some type of harm. And this has a way of stirring it back up and triggering a lot of old things that you may have otherwise thought were dealt with or gone. I want you to know that the folks at the Sexual Assault Center are there and ready and able to support you as you're dealing with this. Please do reach out to them. So with that, I'm going to kick it over to Allison Fay with the Jacob Wetterling Resource Center to provide her information to you.
My name is Allison Fay. I serve as the director of Jacob Wetterling Resource Center, a program of Zero Abuse Project here in Minnesota. Want to thank the Department of Corrections and St. Cloud PD for asking me to just offer a few thoughts today as families are thinking about family safety following the news about the offender being released. Our number is 1-800-325-HOPE, and families can call that number, 1-800-325-4673. If they need help just individually making family safety plans or how to talk to kids at different ages about concerns. Usually when we go to a meeting in person, we're able to hang out at the end and talk to each family individually, but with doing this meeting via technology, we don't have those same opportunities. So just want to let you know we do have family advocates more than willing to take your calls, 1-800-325-HOPE. And one of the more common questions that we hear when we do go to the community notification meetings is the question of, how do I talk to my kid about this without scaring them to death? And I think it's really important for parents and caregivers to have conversations with children about personal and online safety. And sadly, the reason that we're doing it in this case is because parents are concerned for this one individual. But I'd ask us to not focus solely on this one individual and use this opportunity as a time to just spread the awareness around and think about safety. One way to do that is to start by building a child safety net. who are the 5 adults that your kid can talk to if they have a problem or they meet someone who doesn't know the rules about body safety or internet safety. We say 5 because sometimes it's the person on the net who's breaking their rules. We say 5 because sometimes the first person they talk to doesn't know how to help them. And so thinking about who are the 5 people, and maybe your child wants to trace their hand and draw those names on a piece of paper. Maybe if they're older, they just want to make sure they have those numbers in their cell. But we're in times right now that are kind of isolating, and trying to think about who are people my child could reach out to if they had a problem online or in real life with any person. Sadly, most people who do harm kids are people that the child knows and likes. So it's important that we don't just focus on this one offender who we've come to the meeting to learn more about. We use this opportunity to think about a chance to talk to our kids about safety in general. Have you ever met someone who doesn't know the rules about bodies? Have you ever met someone who doesn't know the rules about online safety? Most people do know the rules and they do want to help keep kids safe. So if you meet someone who doesn't know the rules about bodies, if you meet someone who doesn't know the rules about the internet, we want to reach out to one of the 5 people who do know the rules. And we say 5 because sometimes the first person we tell might not be the choice that we want to stick with, and so we still have more people to tell. And then when we think specifically about how do I talk about this offender moving in, one of the things that has worked well is just thinking with younger kids in elementary school, just about the sense of like, have you ever played sports or played a game with a grown-up who didn't know the rules of the game? And if you've ever been in that situation, it can be really frustrating, and sometimes it makes you feel unsafe because if you're playing hockey or football or soccer with a grown-up who doesn't know the rules, that can be something that makes us feel unsafe because grown-ups are supposed to know the rules, and because they're in a position of power, they can make us feel like this might, someone might get hurt. And it's not the kid's job to go over and explain the rules of the game to the grown-up. That usually doesn't go very well, but to instead leave the game and find someone who does know the rules. And so this grown-up who's coming back in our community has shown us that they don't know the rules about bodies and safety. And so if they ever do approach you, to go find someone who does know the rules and check in, but also using this as an opportunity for all friends and all adults. If you ever meet someone, even someone our family knows and likes, who doesn't know rules about bodies, who doesn't know rules about the internet, it's not your fault. I would want to know, you can talk to me about it, and encouraging them to do that. One great way to begin conversation about safety is with a lot of what if scenarios, because then you can see where your child's at, and your child can think through some different scenarios. What if someone in our neighborhood asked you to do something that you knew was against the rules? How would you handle that? And so, and helping equip our kids that way. One of the phrases we use at Jacob Wetterling Resource Center all the time is it's a kid's job to be a kid, and it's the parent's job to keep them safe. And so if this news makes you anxious or upset, as it probably does, because sexual violence shouldn't happen, and we need to do everything we can as a community to eradicate. Please make sure to process that with someone who isn't around your child at that time. And I know we're all in close quarters right now and hunkered down, but whether it's texting someone, whether it's having a call in another room, so when we're with our kid, we can be calm because that calm radiates. And we want to make sure that we're in a good place to have these conversations. If you need help specific with planning, with conversation prompts, with ways to do that, we have tons of resources on our website, jwrc.org for Jacob Wetterling Resource Center. Or again, you can call one of our family advocates. Thank you for taking the time to get educated. Thank you for caring about prevention. And we look forward to supporting you however we can. Thanks.
Okay, welcome back. And thank you to Allison and the Jacob Wetterling Resource Center for all of their fabulous work. We really do value their collaboration with us in meetings like this. Please do connect with them and know that you have a great deal of resources. So to really kind of just wrap things up for you today, I really want to talk about with all the data I threw at you, the 3 90s and 2 Rs. If you take nothing else away from all the numbers I've been throwing around, please let it be this. 90% of those who become known to the system and are subject to all of its different components do not go on to reoffend in a same or similar fashion. They do not go on to reoffend sexually. 90% of those who do cause us harm are known to their victims, and they utilize that relationship to exploit it. So that means 90% of those that are out there today actively engaging in this type of conduct are not known to the system. And that is why broad awareness is just so critical as we go forward. It really does come down to relationships and how those can be exploited or manipulated as opposed to residency. That social proximity is just so much more telling than geographical proximity, where they exist on a map. This is just a quick snapshot of some resources. It is by no means an exhaustive list. I hope that this is just the tip of the iceberg for you. As you start to look at other information out there, please do share this with your friends and family and communities as well. Lastly, I want to talk about a couple other resources that are available to you. The Bureau of Criminal Apprehension, while the BCA maintains the Predatory Offender Registry that is for law enforcement purposes only, you can and I can access the BCA to look at criminal history reports or criminal records. So if you're a caregiver or a parent or a concerned community member and you want to know if somebody has a history that you should be aware of, all you need is their first name and last name and date of birth. And you can put that into the BCA system and you will get their full Minnesota criminal history. And that can be quite a valuable tool. And I would argue that if you're vetting someone to have access with your family or loved ones and they are unwilling to provide a first name, last name, and date of birth, that right there may be cause to eliminate them from your potential group of people that get to have that access. Otherwise, I'd also like you to know that the Department of Corrections maintains a couple different tools available to you. The research and publications that I mentioned earlier are all there for you to review and scrutinize as you wish. And then the offender locator. This is for any individual, regardless of their crime, who is subject to the jurisdiction of the Department of Corrections. So if you know of a case or you are interested in something you read in the paper and you want to see who they're working with or where they're at, as long as they're under the jurisdiction of the DOC, you can pull them up on that offender locator function. And then lastly, the public registrant search. Those 400 and some individuals I showed you earlier are all on that search. You can pull up this man. Once he comes out, we'll activate him onto that public registrant database, and you can look at him. You can look at all 400 some if you want to see what's going on with them, because as you're aware, these individuals don't just exist where they sleep at night. They are entering all communities. They are coming and going for the same things that lead us to come and go, right? Visiting family members, work, vacations, recreation, things like that. So they're crossing boundaries, city lines, county lines, community lines all the time. And so that broad awareness is just so critical. And you can use that registrant search to help inform you of that. Another question we often get is, will we be notified if this man leaves our community? And this is a way you can look that up as well. Law enforcement does have the ability to provide notification if they've determined that a registrant has left the community and will not re-enter. Law enforcement's very careful to sound an all clear and say, hey, everybody, this guy's never coming back here. There may be unique circumstances where they're very confident in that and will put out a notification to say this person has left the community and will not return. More often, though, is the case that they may move from the community but still may very well re-enter because the same resources they were accessing while they lived here are here and are probably going to bring them back, at least coming through the community. And so they tend not to do a broad notification in those situations. So what you can do, though, is you can look him up specifically, and if you see that he's moved, you'll see where he is at all times for as long as he remains a level 3 registrant. So lastly, I think with questions, typically in a public forum, you're able to raise your hand, we'll call on you and answer your questions. Obviously, that's not an option given our current situation, but I do really want to extend an invite. Please do reach out to myself or Sergeant Hession and his team. We are all too eager to assist you and help you and give you more clarity or more information if you need it. Thank you.
I want to take this time to thank Brad and Allison for providing amazing information for us to be able to try and provide as much as we can to keep our public informed. I cannot emphasize enough that the St. Cloud Police Department is committed to work with the public and resources like the Department of Corrections and the Jacob Wetterling Resource Center, as well as the Central Minnesota Sexual Assault Center, to make St. Cloud a safe an incredible place for people to work, visit, and live. Again, my information is up here for you to contact me directly, either at my office or by email, and I will respond to you as quickly as possible to any concerns or questions that you may have. Again, thank you so much for staying tuned to this, and we sure appreciate the cooperation of the public and the people of the area of the city of St. Cloud. Thanks. Take care.